All right, well, brothers and friends, thank you for joining us for another presentation of Refracted Light. We are honored to have again Worshipful Brother Adam Goldman, Grand Orator for the Grand Lodge of Washington, D.C., and he's giving a very intriguing presentation tonight. I promise it's not what you think. The title caused a little bit of concern today, even getting a message from the Grand Master, which our Grand Master couldn't be here tonight, but he did say he would watch the presentation later. So I'll just say, Sean, please do not expel me, please. Anyway, it's if you know Brother Adam like I do, he's very tasteful. He's not going to say anything vulgar or offensive. He is a class act all the way. So, I just ask everyone to give the benefit of the doubt until you see the presentation rather than judging, as some have leapt to some kind of outlandish conclusions based on the title of the talk tonight. So I'll just throw that little disclaimer out there. But Adam, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours, brother.
All right. Thank you, Matt. And Refracted Light, on behalf of the Grand Lodge of District of Columbia and the Grand Master Michael D. Nicholas Sr. and all the Grand Lodge officers, I bring fraternal greetings. This is, there was a bit of drama today over this presentation. And, I'll just start by saying that the views here and the research are my own, and it's not connected to any Grand Lodge, which I may be a member, that, I'm not going to betray any obligation or oaths. We're not going to get into any of that, but we're going to get into a lot of secrets that I've found over many years of research in Freemasonry and Rosicrucianism and Martinism, and Kabbalah, and Gnostic doctrine, which we were talking about as we first started. So, there was a straw argument put up earlier just to say that, any discussion of sex magic, must be related to Crowley or the OTO. We're not going to talk about any of that. I think I have, one quote in here, but otherwise we're going to be talking about the great luminaries of the craft, Mackey. We're going to be talking about Pike and any of that kind of, closed-minded dogmatism that would, try and derail this type of research. They're canceling out some of the great luminaries. So with that said, the secret of sex magic, according to my studies, are hidden in the Masonic Lodge, in our allegory, in our symbols. Numerous other teachings, such as Gnostic doctrine, like I said, Tantra, Qigong, and old societies like the Vril and others. It's not going to be my argument that it's something specific to Freemasonry, quite the contrary, that it's hidden in the great holy books, or as we call them in Freemasonry, the volumes of the sacred law. And so the tradition that I come from, I was born Jewish, and I converted Trinitarian Christian and a Gnostic Christian. So when I talk about the great architect of the universe, I'm talking about usually what we would normally term Yahweh or Elohim. And Elohim comes from El, which is the male version of God. And when we add in the next letter, the H in Hebrew, or the Hey, we get Eloah, which means the goddess. And then when we add on the suffix, the Yud Mem, or the I am in English, to get Elohim, it literally means the gods and the goddesses, or the dual gendered God. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. But in the Kabbalistic tradition, which is, going to be a big part of what I'm discussing tonight, in the Kabbalistic tradition, there's this C that is deity, right? God is everywhere and everything. And in order to create, takes a deep breath, and in that vacuum is part of deity's spirit, which is the female part. And we call that the Shekinah. And the Shekinah was, the womb of deity. And that is what ends up happening, this kind of negative space within deity. And so we're going to start by looking at, where that's hidden in Masonry, because if that's a truism, then we should imagine that there's going to be all sorts of stuff about the goddess hidden in the degrees. And anyone that's watched my cult symbols of Freemasonry presentation on the secrets of number 9, they'll have seen a bit more of this. We'll get more into that in a bit. But as usual with my presentations, I like to start by saying that if you've been in Masonry for a short while, a long while, I'd like you to leave here with, humbly, I would like you to leave here knowing something more than you did when you came here, so that you'll think that this is an hour well spent that will make your Masonic experience that much richer. And maybe your religious experience that much richer when you find out the prevalence of the goddess in Judaism, Christianity, Freemasonry, and elsewhere, Buddhism and Hinduism. And so, so first we'll be looking at where is that Shekinah or the goddess hiding, and also why do we use this ashlar in Freemasonry? What's the point of it? Why the square and compasses? And of course, there's an exoteric meaning which we learn in the craft. But I'm going to be talking about the esoteric or the hidden meanings. And then finally, why the pillars of Freemasonry? Why are these orders of architecture? So hopefully by the end, everyone will be able to take away, some of those concepts, what the symbols mean esoterically. And so finally, before we get started, I'll just say, based on what Matt said earlier, no one should ever tell you what to believe or what to research in Freemasonry. We've all taken obligations, and other than not revealing any of those, which again I won't. My studies are my studies. My research is my research, and so part of the reason I went into the military, because I didn't like bullying, and that could be Masonic bullying, that could be academic bullying. So anyway, with that, all right, let me start sharing here. All right, where is the share screen? Oh, here it is. Got it. All right. Okay, so again, tonight we're talking about sex magic and Freemasonry. When you see a K at the end of magic, it denotes that we're not talking like sleight of hand stuff, like pulling a bunny out of a hat or anything like that. This is the magic associated with Kabbalah, with Buddhist and Hindu, like Tantra, maybe essentially the Western esoteric tradition, which I'm more comfortable with. That's what we mean when we say magic, and it's spelled that way. So so throughout the course of these slides, hopefully you'll see that some of the broad framework of sex magic and its teachings are hidden within the degrees of Freemasonry, either directly or through Kabbalah or elsewhere, alchemy or astrology. So, Brother Theodore Roos here says that and I know some people are on their phones, so I apologize for reading these because I know that some people don't like being read to, but I know not everyone's able to see it the same. So, Brother Roos that lived in 1855 through 1993, if that's right, maybe it was 1893, I might have typoed that, but he said the science of sex magic is the key to the secret of all Masonic symbols. And we're going to find that a lot of Masonic scholars are saying the same thing this evening. And so, as Brother Matt said, I was here, I don't even know, it's been a week, 2 weeks ago, and did a presentation on linguistics and what that revealed about the story that we learn in Freemasonry called the Hiramic legend, or the legend of Hiram Abiff. And we started off by looking at this symbol, which in Freemasonry we call the Virgin Weeping, and we're told that the sprig of acacia in her right hand denotes the death and resurrection of the Grand Master Hiram Abiff, and this book in her hand, denotes some of the great things that he's said to have done in his life. You have time unfurling the ringlets of her hair behind her, and so on and so forth. So by the end of this presentation, I would like you to know a bit more about this symbol. We revealed one part of it. I'll reiterate that part, but I want to keep harping on one picture to show you how much is hidden in the symbols of our craft. And with that, you can really go into any number of secret societies and temples, mosques, and find these same things. So tonight we'll be looking at what is sex magic. And where is it hidden in Freemasonry? When was it put there? And what's with this guy, Hiram? And how does it all relate? So, this is probably the only Masonic scholar, non-Masonic scholar I have in here tonight, but I just really like this this description. And so Debbie and Nichols, in their book Sexual Healing, said that sex magic is a spiritual practice that uses sexual desire to manifest tangible effect in the physical world. And that's something that we've heard very similar from, I heard Ledbetter spoken about tonight, but I think in one of his, and Dion Fortune and others, they have a very similar description of what magic is. One of the most powerful experiences that we have as human beings is orgasmic energy. And if we can pair it with intent, then we can direct the most powerful manifesting force available on earth. And again, you see this in the study of Qi in the East and the practices of Qigong. You find it in Hindu and Buddhist Tantra. I mean, you find this in a lot of other secret societies, again, like Vril and others. But in particular from the Gnostic tradition that I'm coming from. So a lot about how to channel that sexual energies and what you can do with it once you've taken hold of it. So again, looking at the Shekinah, where is this? And by the way, the Shekinah is, the female aspect of a very early iteration of deity, sometimes associated with, the early stages of formation in Kabbalah, which I'll show you momentarily. But here we have this a quote from this book, The Divine Feminine. The Shekinah is the image of the divine feminine, or the feminine face of God, as it was conceived in the Jewish or in the mystical tradition of Judaism, originating perhaps in the rabbinic schools of Babylon. And so as we look at some of these scholars, Westcott and Mathers and other early Masons, particularly of the Society Rosicrucian in Anglia, we find a lot of this Kabbalistic stuff making its way into early Freemasonry, either through Rosicrucianism or elsewhere. You have, some of the founders of the United Grand Lodge of England, like Desaguliers, were members of something called the Kabbalah Club. And so a lot of this Kabbalistic teaching is hidden here and elsewhere. Certainly, if anyone's looked into some of the the Shakespearean stuff, you'll find that, there's a lot hidden in Shakespeare's works as well, double entendres. But, living in DC as I do, one of the most obvious hidden in plain sights that we find is, DC was laid out by Freemason George Washington and Pierre Charles L'Enfant. And so we ask ourselves, why are we called the District of Columbia? How did we get that name? And we find that Columbia is a Roman, a depiction of just the goddess. And so we have different names for this kind of mother goddess, and it could be Aphrodite, it could be Isis, it could be a number of them. But Aphrodite's Roman counterpart was Venus, or Venus Columba, and Columba means the dove. And so that's from whence we get the goddess Columbia, and we know that Capitol Hill is named after Capitoline Hill in Rome. So there's a lot of Roman stuff. The Potomac was called the Tiber at one point, and there's 7 hills in DC, 7 hills of Rome. I mean, it goes on. And by the way, DC was called Rome, Maryland, once upon a time, before it was the District of Columbia. And don't forget, Rome, Maryland is tucked right between Virginia and Maryland, the Virgin Mary. So you have Rome and the Virgin Mary, like literally in this area right here. So DC is laid out by a bunch of Freemasons to the goddess Columbia. And you see on the left side here, I know you can see my pointer, you can see that this depiction of Columbia, and we'll find her over and over, has all sorts of great stuff going. Like, here is the symbol of the sword, which in tarot is associated with the air. Kabbalistically, it's associated with formation. Anyway, but you see this goddess, which essentially is the mother goddess of our nation. And then maybe last thing I'll say here is, if you have a goddess principle, or what we call the sacred feminine, hidden in your secret society, I'm not talking about Freemasonry in particular, but just in any society, if everyone is, talking about the same sacred feminine principle, or maybe just a symbol, a pentagram, because that's the shape that the planet Venus makes in the heavens. So again, Venus Columba. So if it's, all of us worshiping the same sacred feminine, or having reverence for her Shekinah, then why even call her by any of those names? Why not just call her Our Lady? Because this is Our Lady that we're all revering. And Our Lady in French is Notre Dame, in Latin, Nostradamus. And so we'll find why Notre Dame is significant here in a few slides. But again, the Shekinah, or this female aspect of the Elohim, what we call the Eloah, our Spanish speakers or French speakers will recognize Eloah as either Ella, which means her, or El in French. But if she's the spirit of deity, we have as a Trinitarian Christian, we have the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit in Judaism is female. We call it the Ruach, or the Ruach Elohim. And the spirit is associated with wind, which is what, a bird flapping its wings. It gets elevated by pushing down on the air. So the bird symbolizes the alchemical principle of air. But also, what is the Virgin Mary holding here is a dove, Spanish La Paloma, and in Latin La Colomba again, and La Colomba is again where we get Columbia. So, and you see that around her we have this kind of lunar crescent, because she is a symbol. Her sexual lunar energy is a symbol of the moon, whereas baby Jesus here, and you could see this same depiction of Isis and Horus, by the way, very similar. And again, and he would have a falcon head, so again associated with the bird, the spirit, the Ruach. But you have all this symbolism of the sun and the moon, which is part of the Masonic allegory and ritual yet again. And again, here is Columbia with her Phrygian cap, and she is representing the Hermetic doctrine, as above, so below, pointing upwards and downwards to the earth, a foot on the land and one on the sea. But she's again the goddess Columbia, that is the Notre Dame of our nation. And and then at one point, I guess they brought down from the top of the Capitol. You could see Columbia that would normally be on the Capitol. But what is the Capitol other than the womb of a goddess? And so theologians will tell you that anytime you go into a church, you are going into the womb of the mother goddess. And if you look even at a lot of the doors going in, you'll actually see the doors entrance in these Gothic cathedrals look like the female vulva, and you'll see a little keystone at the top, which represents the clitoris. So, but that's in a lot of these very old buildings like that have this representation. And again, what is directly across from this, the womb of the goddess on the other side of the National Mall, is the Washington Monument, or the obelisk, which obelisk comes from the word Baal, or Baal's shaft. And so we'll talk about that more later. The all-seeing eye or the eye of providence of Freemasonry, we find also in Columbia Broadcast Service, right? CBS is called Columbia. And then Columbia Pictures, again, you see the similarity of these two. So you literally find this goddess worship everywhere you look. And so this is going to be the basis of a lot of what we're talking about in sex magic. First, it's a very complex topic, obviously, because we're getting into alchemy and Kabbalah and elsewhere, Hermetic teachings. But in order to get there, just a few concepts that we need to know. And one of them is that, this idea of Our Lady, Notre Dame, or the dove is hidden throughout all of these things, including media. Blackmer in 1923 in Lodge and the Craft says that the lodge is a representation of King Solomon's temple, and the temple was calculated to symbolize the maternal human body, wherein the candidate must enter to be born again. And by the way, I talk about this I have an article on triaprima.co if you want to see more about this. Anyway, the uterus and vagina represent the porch of the temple. The pillars of the porch represent the fallopian tubes, and the pomegranate, the ovary, its exuberant seeds, the ova cells. So academic Masons here telling you the same thing. And so we should be able to see the goddess elsewhere through both the lodge room and the allegories of Freemasonry, and indeed we can. So here we have faith, hope, and charity, and here you can see that one of them, she's offering you the right side of her face, and one she's offering you the left side. This is actually a clearer picture. So again, the left side of the face, right side of the face, and then charity, she's looking, right at you. And so you can even see that she's on top of this kind of lunar sphere here with some of these other symbols that we're going to get to momentarily. But when you wonder, where the sacred feminine is hidden in Freemasonry, then you find that the discussions of the moon are hiding her. So here's the full moon. Again, here's the full face. Here is the waning crescent. Here is the waning face, and the waxing crescent, the waxing face. And so, so this is the goddess Luna, and which means the moon. And remember, a girl's menstrual cycle comes from the word moon, or her moon cycle, menstrual, Monday, month, all comes from the word moon. This is one place that we begin to see where the reverence of the sacred feminine, which later will become applicable to sex magic, is hidden in the craft. But going back to the the idea of Shekinah. So in Kabbalistic teachings, in the Talmud, it talks about Adam's first wife. And Adam's first wife is this gal named Lilith, and Lilith was born from the same earth as Adam was. So in other words, she wasn't taken from Adam's rib. She was born in exactly the same time, or created at exactly the same time. Breath was breathed into her at exactly the same time. And so the story goes that that during the sexual act, she wouldn't listen to her husband. She wanted to be on top every once in a while because she was co-equal to Adam, and it basically reached a boiling point, and the story goes that Adam goes to the Lord and says that she refuses to lie beneath me, and deity has to have a stern talking to her. He says, I know you were created at the same time, but the place of the woman is beneath her husband, and so she won't listen. And long story short, she gets banished from the Garden of Eden, and with her banishment, she becomes a demon called a succubus, and her name Lilith is like a night creature or something to that effect, if I remember correctly, and sometimes conflated with Mesopotamian demonesses called the Lilitu. But so she's cast out, and her revenge, up to this point, women don't have any pains of birth. And so she kind of curses women to feel these pains of childbirth, but also to get her revenge when boys have their nocturnal emissions at night. It's said that in this kind of a Jewish tradition, that it's the succubus Lilith that's impregnating her, who will have 1,000 demons spawn each evening to revenge her. And these demon spawn are responsible for, among others, crib death. And so this is where we begin to see magic of Kabbalah hidden in almost like everyday teachings of Judaism. And so to protect babies from this evil Lilith and and are demon spawn in crib death, mothers would do magical incantations, and that may have been lost over time, it was, but when they're singing over their child with love, it actually puts a protection spell over the child, which protects it, among with other things that we know, like the red woolen and bracelet and other things, and a metal pin on the diaper. But so the mothers sing this song in order to put a magical spell to protect their children, and that is known as a lullaby, because it would make Lolith go away, Lolith go by, a lullaby. And so, but the other last thing I'll say about this picture is, as we're going to see momentarily, this serpent, while it has many exoteric meanings, which we certainly, have heard before, the esoteric meaning is that this is a sexual energy that winds up the human body. It winds up one way for female and another way for male, and it's called the Kundalini energy in the Eastern tradition. Kundalini and Tantra itself means to weave, and it's and Tantra, which is another version of sex magic, is the weaving of the male and female serpents. But another place we hide this in Freemasonry, I know it's hard to believe when you look at this point within a circle that is depicting a sexual act, but it is. It's looking at the, it could be the spermatozoa, and inside of the egg, and Kabbalistically that would be associated with the world of Bria, which is the world of creation, which later begins to form the world of Yetzirah. And so, but it could also just be the penis inside the womb, looking at it from the top down. And so, but if this last picture has to do with, at one point, male and female came from deity, and they were one and the same. What the story of Adam and Lilith is telling you is that, or really it's later, but is that eventually God creates woman, or the womb man, from Adam's rib, and that's when male and female are effectively separated, because before that they're just one and the same, anthropomorphic. And the Old Testament says, male, female created he them, talking about that they were both in one body, androgynous. And so this is that symbol. This is beginning to see the division of the male, the point, the phallus, the line, and the female, the circle, the uterus. And again, here's Pike in Morals and Dogma saying that the union of the monad and duad produces the triad, signifying the creative principle. It's a gentle euphemism. He's saying it's sex. And so now we're starting to see the Shekinah on one hand, hidden in the degrees of Masonry, and so B, we're seeing that some interpretations from some of our great lights. And so, when I go for my runs, I run down to the National Mall. And so one of the things I like to do, I like to go through around the womb of the goddess Columbia in the Capitol. And then I go to the other end of the mall, and I go up around the Washington Monument, or this big ball's shaft, the big phallus, which I get into other presentations which have to do with some Osirian legends, so the story of Osiris. But looking at it from above, though, you can see that it's inside this, what we call the fish bladder, the vesica piscis. And so this is, you can see here is the fish that we all know so well, right here. And fish, it means ichthys in Greek, or ichthys means fish in Greek, and that's one of the part of the etymology of the name Jesus is ichthys. And so, but in the Eastern Sanskrit, we would call the vagina the yoni, and that's associated with this what is called here the female delta, and you can see this because it's like the cup right here, right? So here's the female delta, and so you can see that the fish is a symbol in the ancient world for the vagina, and so so we can see that even in this Washington Monument, if you look at the monument from top down, what do you have? A point within a circle, right? So again, you can even at this early stage of this presentation, you can see that there are some connections. But more than that, when you come into the lodge room, well, let's start with this. So, I said I wanted to show you guys why the square encompasses. So again, so look at the shape of this, what he calls the female delta, and you can see that what does the square make, which is the female delta, right? And here from Born in Blood, from Robeson's book, you can see that it is the dark downward pointed triangle, the female, and it's dark because of the lunar energy that the woman is connected to. Again, the menstrual cycle is connected with the 28 or 29 and a half days of the moon cycle. And the upward pointing square, or triangle, I mean, is white for the solar energy of the male. And like I said last time in our last presentation, in Latin, sun, the soul, right? The soul, and like moon, like month, mon, the soul, Amon, Solomon, the Solomon, or in the Quran, the Suleiman. And you can see that in these three pillars that we have here, for Masonry, right? So a candidate comes here and represents this middle pillar, which we'll show you momentarily is Kabbalistic, but one of them, again, see it's dark and it's lunar, and see it's a downward pointing triangle. And the other is white, solar, upward pointing triangle. And then so you see the gray one, which is a blending of the white and the dark. You have the hexagram, or the square and the compasses. And so this hexagram is a two-dimensional representation of something that's three-dimensional, which is a cube. And so this cube is the ashlar of Freemasonry. So when we're making our ashlars square or perfect, what we're doing is we're learning to harness the sexual energies and not spill the, as the Bible puts it, the shemen, which means oil, but it also is the same consonants as the word semen. So not to spill that and control that sexual energy, which is again what Qigong and Tantra and others have in their teachings. And we're utilizing that in order to have healthier bodies and to produce a tangible effect in the material world. And by the way, I think in other presentations, if you unfold this cube of space, you get the Passion Cross, which is associated with the 32nd degree of Freemasonry, and I command a court of honors. And again, and what do you have in between the compasses and the squares? You have the G spot, right in the middle. But again, looking to our great luminaries, we find in 1869, Mackey tells us that the triangle pointing downward is the female symbol corresponding to the yoni, or the vagina, and the upward pointing triangle is the male, the lingam, the penis. When the two triangles are interlaced, it represents the union of the active and passive forces in nature. It represents the male and female elements. So again, this isn't something that is a taboo in Masonry. There's nothing that's negative about the sexual act unless it's used negatively. But imagine this is a beautiful act between a husband and wife that are channeling that energy in their love of deity. And so, and that's what is the product of that is the magic of childbirth, right? So there's your magic there. But again, in Manual of the Lodge, Mackey tells us that the phallus was an imitation of the male generative organ. It was represented usually by a column surrounded by a circle at the base. So here's Mackey telling you that a column with a circle at the base is a phallic symbol. So anyway, and then one more, in Morals and Dogma, Pike tells us that the compass is the hermetic symbol of the creative deity and the square of the productive earth or universe. Therefore, Masons look at the compass as the male phallus and the square as the female vulva. As you look at the Masonic emblem here, you can see the obvious penetration of the female square by the points of the compass. Whichever way you look at it, the compass and square are thought of as depicting the heterosexual sex act. So, so less gentle euphemisms, and here's Pike just put it all out there. But you can see that it does align also again. So Tantra means weaving. So again, as we saw with the picture of Lilith, there is a serpent that goes up the spine, and this is the sexual energy that was talked about in the biblical narrative of Jacob's ladder, when his head is on a stone, just like the ashlar or the cube is a stone. And again, when he has his vision, he sees God face to face in pineal, is what it says in Hebrew, which is the pineal gland. So it was an internal journey, the stairway to heaven. Jacob's ladder is the human spine. And so he was traveling up in his meditations. And when it says that he had his head on a rock, the rock is associated, as you'll see in a moment, with this base chakra, or base sephira, as it's called, the emanation in the Kabbalistic tree of life. And of course, here we have the root chakra symbolizes a flower, and Georgia O'Keeffe, we know that flowers are vaginas. So, and again, Tantra means weaving. So if her serpent is winding up the caduceus one way, so Hermes' staff one way, the male is going the other way, because again, at one time we were male-female according to the Old Testament. And so our energies were complete, and it looked much like the staff of caduceus, the staff of Hermes, or the caduceus, which is mistakenly applied to the American Medical Association, which should only have one serpent going up of it. And so, but you can see that our Masonic forebears, they also hidden in plain sight. This is from one of our brother's presentations. He let me use it. And but you can see that, again, here are the 7 lower chakras, same as the 7 lower sephiroth of the Kabbalistic tree of life, hidden again in Chartres Cathedral. And Chartres is short for Notre Dame de Chartres. So again, there's Notre Dame, Our Lady. And so, and if you could see this a bit closer, you can see the way that it's designed. So here is the the root chakra, the sexual energy, and you can see that in the entrance that you have the female vulva inside the womb, and then you also see these same types of pillars of Freemasonry in all these Gothic cathedrals, which is again one male, one female, and in the middle, or our candidate coming into a lodge room, is blending this female energy with this male energy. And so that's the sex magic we're talking about. So, in the Kabbalistic tree of life, which we have shown here, I'll show you other ones, but you can see more clearly that here is one of the pillars of Freemasonry as you walk into the lodge room. Here is the other one. This is the male, the solar, called the pillar of mercy. This is the female, the lunar, called the pillar of severity. And here is the middle pillar, which is also associated with Shekinah. It's the blending of the two. And in Tantra, this chakra is called the crown chakra. In Kabbalah, we call it Keter, which means the crown as well. And so, but we're only focusing right now on this one, Yesod. Yesod means the foundation. And so the foundation is just what it sounds like. It's a foundation stone, and it's symbolized by a cube, an ashlar. And so all these cornerstones and ashlars and everything else that we're looking at in Freemasonry about making these stones perfect, it's all about this stone, this yesod, this foundation stone, and taking the sexual energy and controlling it until we get into this solar energy of Tiferet, or beauty. And so again, the sun and the moon, and this is what we're trying to traverse, this pathway. The sun, the soul, the moon, the mon, the sun and the moon, the solomon. And down here, this is where we are. This is, outside the lodge room before you're coming in through this birthing ceremony. and you're in this profane world, the kingdom. And it's called the kingdom because it has all the temptations in it, right? This is the story of Christ at Gethsemane being tempted, which is tempted by, it's called the kingdom because it's the four kingdoms: the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, the mineral kingdom, the kingdom of man. In other words, everything that you like to do, like me, is smoke a cigar and drink fine scotch and beautiful women walking by me on the street. All these things are here in the in Malkuth, the kingdom. And again, we find this in the Pater Noster, the Lord's Prayer. Our king, thy kingdom come, right? That's about right here. Thy kingdom come is this kingdom right here, on earth, Malkuth, as it is in heaven, Keter, right? So, and so finally, Yesod is a code in itself, which is if you move this letter Yud from there to the end, so it begins with, so it would spell the word Sadi, which means secret. So this is codes within codes within codes. Again, there's exoteric or the plain read, the literalist interpretations, and then there's the hidden meanings. And so if in Freemasonry we're taking an ashlar and we're taking a rough ashlar and we're using our working tools to make it something that the builder can use in building a temple. And remember, the sides of his head are the temples, right? So my body is a temple, King Solomon's temple. This is the temple, your body. And when we're talking about King Solomon's temple, this is it right here, the Solomon temple, right? So, operative masons, chop at a real stone and make it, hexagonal but cubical. But in operative alchemy, maybe they're trying to turn lead to gold. But in speculative alchemy, just like speculative masonry, turning lead to gold, which means turning this, the earth, right? This, what they call black earth, which is Kemet in ancient Coptic or Demotic, the ancient Egyptian language, and that meant black earth, and it's from that we get alchemia, or alchemy from the black earth, and so and you're purifying it through this climb up Jacob's ladder to where he meets God face to face in Pineal. And by the way, you see stuff elsewhere in the lodge room, right? So the pillar of so Geburah means strength or severity. So the pillar of strength, right? The pillar of beauty, Tiferet means beauty, and wisdom, Hokmah means wisdom. So there's your wisdom, strength, and beauty hidden in the Kabbalistic tree of life as well. But but if we take that and we move it over to this representation of Shekinah, or the moon goddess Luna, you can see that right, she's telling you, like, here's the Torah, although that's a big code in itself, which I get into in a different presentation. But what is she doing? She's between two pillars. She's representing Shekinah, the middle pillar, or the pillar of mildness, or equilibrium. And you can see she has this cross on her chest, which is symbolizing equilibrium. And look around her head, right? So these fruit, these pomegranate-looking things that I think Mackie or someone else mentioned earlier, right? So here is Keter Hokmah Bina, what we sometimes refer to as the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And again, Bina is feminine, so the Holy Spirit, or the Ruach Elohim, is feminine. Sometimes we refer to it as Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. Different ways of depicting the same thing. And but again, the second card of the tarot, which is really the third card, because there's a 0 card, also represent these 3 Sephiroth, which we call the supernals. So that's a hidden, a misleading Roman numeral. It really is the third card. But again, you see the foundation, Yesod, the ashlar, the sexual lunar energy, which is when the tree of life is overlaid over the body of man, right? You see that it is associated with the groin, or the sexual energies that you're intending that you should be taught as a new Mason. When Mason used to be more esoteric, to learn to control. And you can think of your admonition about when you're handed the compasses, to keep your passion, sexual passion, within due bounds. You're learning to control it. You're not just spilling this seed. You're using it like the Oracle of Delphi and all these other virgins that were communing with the great I Am, which is one of the monikers of Keter, in order to commune with that. The priest and others would remain virgins. And in Freemasonry, right, this crown becomes the top hat of your worshipful master. This is, Jesus on the cross. The crown is also the yarmulke or the kippah, the turban of the Sikhs, you name it. But in this Masonic tracing board, I mean, now that you know what you're looking at, how obvious is this, right? So here is, and by the way, it's flipped because one is, this is her looking out from the outside in, and this is, looking from east to the west. This is going the opposite direction. So in this Masonic plate, you see the solar, which you can see it's a whiter column, is associated with this one. This lunar one, right, you can see is associated with this darker one. Again, remember, these are phallic, right? So it's a column over this circular base that we already learned about. And you see that the symbol of Jacob's ladder, right, with a key, which I'll show you the meaning of shortly, but the, and here's the cubes again, right? Here's the foundation stones, right? So, and again, look at the mosaic pavement, the blacks and the whites, the blacks and the whites, right? So this is also, the sun and the moon, and so in here, the high priestess represents the middle pillar. And here is the middle pillar that has Jacob's ladder winding up it, showing you that it's that Kundalini serpent energy. And so in the death and resurrection story, right, is saying, that our Kundalini energy is dead, it's dormant, but through these teachings of the esoteric neophyte degrees, you're going to learn to harness that energy and become a more spiritual being. And then you're going to be able to commune with animals and other sort of kind of theurgic things, theurgic meaning magic, which Hermes Trismegistus was the father of alchemy, astrology, and theurgy or magic. And so, and remember, Hermes, right, was also, Hermes and, the Greek god Hermes and his consort Aphrodite is the same as Solomon, right? Sun and moon, Aphrodite or hermaphrodite. And then finally, just looking at, what this guy now looks like in the lodge room. So first, you can see how the how these Sephiroth, or these emanations of God, fit into a Masonic tracing board. Again, but it couldn't be more obvious if we know that the Father, which is Abba, which is the root of Abith, right, the Father. And so this is Abba, the pillar of mercy, and he's solar, right, the soul, the man, Soliman, and here's Ima, or the mother. And so you can see that the tree of life is depicting the male and female, and the perfected man in the middle, or perfected woman in the middle, has learned to channel both those Kundalini energies up the spine, and we have the serpent intertwined like the caduceus of Hermes. And again, looking in the lodge room, you can see that here is the west, or this is actually outside of the lodge room. Behind is anyway, so, but it's behind the lodge room and outside the lodge room, I'm sorry. And then when you come into the lodge, as a young entered apprentice, you come, with a cord around your waist, symbolizing the umbilical cord. You're leading this, dark, you can't hear or see much inside your mom's womb, and you're coming into the lodge room, and you're slapped on the butt, and you're brought to light, and you can, now all of a sudden you're on this pathway to the great I am, which really is the great I am becoming, is what it literally translates to. Ehia, Asher Ehia. And again, just that, it's called the Elohim. Again, remember, that is the gods and the goddesses. And this is why God is up here and divides itself into all this. This is why we have the 3 in 1. God divides itself into the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit in order to do this creation, which ends up down in the earth. And so the lodge room, centered around the volume of the sacred law, is hiding a lot of these secrets, but these secrets are so profound and so complex that the moment you try and describe any of these things in Kabbalah up here, the moment you even open your mouth to utter a word to describe it, you've failed. Because how do you describe God in his what we call nothingness state? And better to not even think of God as nothing, better to think of no thing. But literally, the moment you try to think of these things, you've failed. And so again, this is about reawakening as you come in here, the Kundalini energy, and you're taught to do that from this Holy Spirit through the this Sephirah. And again, if we look at this plate, what do you see? You see this coffin down here because you have this dead, dormant energy that you're going to learn how to reawaken in the Kabbalistic sense, or the Tantric sense. And another one of my brothers in the Scottish Rite, just quickly to show you that he put all the degrees of Freemasonry on the Kabbalistic tree, quite nicely. So. PFC, Paul Foster Case, also Mason and member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, says Masonry cannot be fully appreciated or understood without knowledge of the Kabbalistic tree of life. And these are guys that, are, again, the great luminaries of our craft. If you haven't read any of PFC's work, then I highly encourage you to. So if this is about resurrecting the dead Hiram, right? So if this is about that, then here we see the Kundalini coming out of this kind of vaginal lotus flower from the Indian tradition, and winding up the spine, and you'll see that all of these are at particular nodes or chakras. And we find this quite often too, is the waters. I think if you saw in the Virgin Weeping, she was holding a cup, which is the cup in tarot. It's associated with water and the waters of creation. Right now we're in the Piscean age, or the age of Pisces. And then you see that obviously Mary in Latin, mare, means the ocean. And Christ was the fisher of men, and you name it. So, which has to do, again, more hidden symbolism, but beyond the scope of this talk. And so the Shekinah, her symbol for today's purposes would be the fire, or the Ruach Elohim, right? When we look at the name of God in 4 letters, what we call the Tetragrammaton, a word of 4 letters that we commonly pronounce Yud He Vav He, which gives us Jehovah or Yahweh. When we put this, the Shekinah in the middle, or this letter Shin, the letter SH, you get, instead of Yahweh or Jehovah, you get Yeshua, which in Hebrew is Jesus. And so it's inserting this female sexual energy of Shin, and this is the Kabbalistic tree again, with what they call the 3 mother letters of the Hebrew alphabet. And this one is fire, the letter Mem is water, and associated Aleph. And so you'll find also that if you look at, I'm not going to talk about, any societies that I happen to be in, but just in general, if you look at penalties within secret societies, you find that a lot of them have something to do with either fire, water, and air. And again, the 33 bones of the spinal column are associated with the both the 33 years on earth of Christ, and also the 33 degrees of the Scottish Rite. And down here we have the sacrum, right, which is like the sanctum sanctorum, the holy of holies, the holy bones down here, and down in the lower back, which a lot of old guys like me have problems with, is called the lumbar. Lumbar comes from the word tree in Latin, right? So the tree of life, the central nervous system. And you can see at the top, these are the two hemispheres of the brain, which the spine feeds into. So the Kundalini energy is coming from your groin, winding up the tree, and it winds up in the central nervous system. And it's an electrical energy that's traveling up the spinal fluids, right? The Spirit of God moved upon the face of the water, right? That's the waters in your spine. If you're interested in more of that, check out the Gnostic teachings of Samael Aun-Weor. And Leonard Nimoy, Jewish Kabbalist, and he's showing you right here, the secret is the letter Sheen. So again, look at the shape of Sheen, it's like a W. And you see that he's making that with his hand. And that has to do with awakening the Kundalini energies. And so, and this has been called, this hand sign is, has, usually like some sort of solar reference related to Leo, or maybe like a talon or something associated with Scorpio, the bird before the scorpion. And I talked about this last time in the previous presentation because everyone might not have been in that presentation. So now we're talking about Adam's second wife, right? So the first one wouldn't lie beneath him, she was cast out. But now we're talking about, so trying to find our way back. That's what this is all about. We were separated from our other halves, and so this sexual energy, the other half of our Kundalini energy, was ripped out of our bodies with the separation of Eve from Adam. And so we're always trying to get back. And so like I said last time, so in the Garden of Eden, remember, so there's this serpent coming up this tree, which is the Kundalini serpent energy. But there were two trees in the Garden of Eden, the tree of life, which we're talking about here, but also this tree, which is the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And the tree of knowledge of good and evil is code, because what is the tree of knowledge? Have you ever heard the phrase like, I knew that, girl in the biblical sense, right? Why would you say something so, peculiar? Why would knowing somebody in the biblical sense mean that you've had sex? And so, and we find that when, Gabriel came to Mary, he told her she was going to give birth to Jesus. She says, I've not yet known a man. Like, how can that happen? So again, the verb to know, and we find other, battles and kill the men and the women that have not yet known a man, take them for your brides. And so this verb to know everywhere is associated with the sexual act in theology. So what we have here is the tree of knowledge, right? So it's, when we have the verb to know, we know that it has something to do with the sexual act. They're sharing this piece of fruit, which means, the sexual act, the fruit that comes from it is the orgasm. So now it takes us back to that quote in the very beginning from Debbie and Nichols, which says that learning to harness this orgasmic energy right here is the key to producing, magic in to manifesting magic in the exterior world. And but you're not supposed to let your seed go. You're supposed to harness that sexual energy, and it's supposed to be beautiful. You're not supposed to defile yourself with letting your semen out. And so, and remember what happens here is, after they've eaten of this fruit, in other words, once they've had an orgasm, they're disconnected. This silver cord was loosened between them and deity. And then, that's when as the fall of man on the tree of life, and it goes from Yesod, which we're talking about as the cube, into Malkuth, and that's when they realize that they're naked. Up to this point, they're so innocent, they didn't know that they were naked, and immediately what do? They, in their embarrassment, they cover their genitalia with fig leaves, or as I argued in the last presentation, the first Masonic aprons. And Helena Blavatsky in The Secret Doctrines, she'd say that people like me, will maintain that the Garden of Eden is the holy paradise, the place desecrated by the sin of Adam and Eve. But the occultists will deny this dead letter interpretation and show that this ancient book, if read esoterically, is based upon earlier traditions. And she's referring to, these Eastern traditions, which was kind of her bailiwick. And again, I just wanted to show the nexus with the previous presentation, but what are these other than phallic symbols, right? And so again, here's the birds and the bees. These are two letters, the two male letters within the sacred name of deity, Yud He Vav He. This is Yud, this is Vav, an erect phallus and a limp phallus. And so this is associated with alchemical fire, and it's inside the delta, which is alchemical fire, also the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, the Shekinah down here, and Vav, which is the Washington Monument, which is the number 6, and associated with formation, which we learn about in books like the Sefer Yetzirah. And again, our square and compasses are, just depicting sexual union here. And also, again, the these columns, which in Spanish columna is also phallic, and you can see up here is the serpent again. So it's kind of depicting this Kundalini energy. And by the way, this is the crown, right? The crown chakra, the Keter, and everything in here is Kabbalistic, alchemical, astrological, right? So. And I'm going to get into this hopefully another time if I'm invited back after this. But I touched on this in the previous presentation. But so this was about the separation of the male and female, and then really talking about where the goddess is hidden. But Horus, was also the both the first virgin birth, and with Immaculate Conception story. And again, he's wearing this kind of Masonic apron, carrying the deacon's rod. And as we look into the story of Horus, we'll find the other part of the story about the phallus, which is secreted in both our degrees and elsewhere. But like I said, when we looked at the tracing board earlier, we saw a key which was on Jacob's ladder, or the stairway to heaven, or the what do they call it in the Wizard of Oz, or the Wizard of Etz, which means Etz is tree, and tree of life is in Hebrew is Etz Chaim. And so the Wizard of Oz is talking about the yellow brick road, the stairway to heaven. It was an allegory all about going up this middle pillar, the Shekinah. And but as we'll get into this hopefully in another presentation, where we'll look more at the astromythology of the story of Horus, and where that's depicted in Masonry and religious texts and elsewhere. But just for now, just to maybe whet your appetite, because if you look at this symbol back here, which is called the Ankh, and it means life, and it's symbolized in Scottish Rite Freemasonry and elsewhere as a key, because it looks like a key. You see it fits beautifully on the tree of life. And remember, Ankh means life, and this is called the tree of life. So it's a heck of a coincidence. Bill Hicks said, "Call me a conspiracy theorist, and I'll call you a coincidence theorist." There's just too many similarities here. Hall in his Secret Teaching says the efforts made to discover the origin of the Hiramic legend show that while the legend in its present form is comparatively modern, the underlying principles run back to remotest antiquity, and it's generally admitted by modern Masonic scholars that the story of the martyred Hiram is based on the Egyptian rites of Osiris, which again is what I'd like to get into to finish this story. But as you can see, it's a lot to try and cover something like sex magic and where it's hidden. There's so much involved here that we could scratch the surface of a few things, but hopefully with the slides that we went over, you can see that sex magic, when we're talking about, is really just spiritual awakening of the Kundalini energy, but is symbolized by the death and resurrection of Hiram Abiff in the stories of Masonry, and that our degrees were designed to teach neophytes how to control themselves, their energy, so they don't become driven by that sexual energy, driven mad, right? And remember, the word lunatic comes from that lunar energy, luna, right? Luna energy is what creates the lunatic, right? And we know on full moons we have more crimes associated with passions and things like that. And we'll look at this more next time. But the Hiramic legend is loosely based on this another widow's son, which is Horus, son of the slain Osiris, and son of Osiris's wife slash sister, Isis. And so now, but if we look at Isis, Venus Columba, Our Lady, you can see that she's weeping in front of this, the word in Latin is colum, the dove, right? When we see the dove, we find that the dove is colum, which is a double entendre for column, columna in Spanish. And so we find that when we're looking at a broken column, what we're saying is this is the sexual energy. Remember, we already learned that this is a phallic symbol. And when we're looking at the broken column, that's why she's weeping, is because this is the other half. This is the male part of the sexual energies. Here's Aphrodite. This is supposed to be Hermes, and he's got one energy going up one way. She's got one going up the other way. But this guy just can't control himself, and so he's he hasn't learned to channel the sexual energy. That's why Venus or Venus Columba is really weeping. And so anyway, so. I think we'll end on that, and because we're told that this was going to be all about Crowley and the OTO, I thought we'd jam in this ending quote from Crowley: "If the secret of sexual magic, which is a scientific secret, were perfectly understood, there would be nothing which the human imagination conceived that could not be realized in practice." And so these degrees, that's what we want. We want to teach you to learn to control your energy, become a better human being, a better husband, a better boyfriend, a better member of the lodge, and a lot of this comes from being able to control that part of yourselves, and it's the root, and that's why we call it the foundation. It's the foundation from which the work is employed. And so with that, I will stop sharing, and I will hand it back to you, Brother Matt. Let's see.
Brother Adam, that was really fascinating. I enjoyed that, and I appreciate you giving that presentation tonight. And we'll open it up to any questions. I do want to start with Brother Steve O'Donnell from Scotland. Asked if there was a correlation or any relation with Gulliver's Lilliput.
I haven't looked at that specifically, but if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, usually flowers are associated with the yoni in certain allegories. I think I said last time that if you looked at the Arthurian legend, Lancelot has his phallic lance, and Guinevere, and the chalice that he was seeking was Guinevere's uterus. So you find chalices are generally and flowers are generally associated with it, and these guys that are Rosicrucians and Martinists and other societies, they all have a different way of telling the same story. Just like one of the things that attracted me to the Gnostic doctrine is that you really learn to appreciate the beauty in all religions, and that could be any of the pagan mythologies. That could be, which is a derogatory term, by the way, but in the so-called pagan ideologies, or the Abrahamic faith or Eastern religions, you find that the framework that is beneath all of the literalist interpretation is telling you certain things. I mean, and that's why Christ says to Nicodemus, that which is born of flesh is flesh, and that which is born of spirit is spirit. And if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. And these are all Kabbalistic things that you find in either traditional Kabbalism, or in Martinism, the Universal Table, or others. So.
All right, fantastic. If anyone has any questions for Adam, please feel free to unmute yourself.
Hey, Adam, I just wanted to say thanks for doing this talk. Thanks for, I wasn't offended at all by anything you said here. I thought it was great. I thought it was a very serious study. I think that, nobody heard the words penis and vagina and giggled, like school children. I think we can approach this stuff like reasonable adults. I think that's important. This is important research. Thanks for doing it. And the Crowley quote was a nice touch there at the end. Just kind of drive your point home. And yeah, I really appreciate it. I got to run, but I'll talk to you later. And thanks again. Good night.
All right. Good night, Jamie. Great seeing you.
Yeah, good job, Brother Adam. It's always a pleasure to hear your talk, and especially good to hear your voice since I'm far from home. I've actually heard this talk before, and you actually touched on some stuff that you hadn't touched on before. So I'm a fan of the way you present. You always bring something new to the equation, so it's not the same story every time. So most appreciated.
Thanks, Joe. Like you, I'm a life learner, right? And so I play with the slides a little bit, but I pray and I meditate before I talk, and really I have one goal in mind, which is to bring light to somebody somewhere, and just let whatever needs to flow through me. And so hopefully something that I've been reading, which has been some great stuff recently, it should change.
I'm a little mad at you. The book covers that you showed on your slide so far, they're all super expensive and out of print on Amazon. So
I didn't even show you the expensive ones. I know, but I'm the same way. I'll be reading something, and like last night I was reading in bed, and it touched on a book, and I knew I couldn't fall asleep, until because I would wake up and forget all about it. So I ran to my phone real quick, even though I didn't want to get out of bed, just to put it in Amazon, and it was like, yeah, 300 something bucks. What are you gonna do? I just paid I think $50 for a 1970s version of Garden of Pomegranates because it wasn't available anywhere. And it says like $3 originally. It's like,
yeah, man. If my wife ever saw my Abe Books bill, she would lose her mind. So.
Yeah.
Hey, Barbara, I was just talking with Joe.
Shut up, Matt.
So Daniel, and Daniel, please forgive me if I mispronounce your last name, Lares. He says, Brother Adam, what's your theory that there be so much reverence to the goddess in a temple which was run by Jewish male priests, or a modern lodge attended by man? I know the Greek culture was very male-dominated, but yet they revered Athena in Athens or other female goddesses more often than the other gods. Athena sprang from Zeus, his inner Shekinah. And he says that's his interpretation. And Vestals in the Greco-Roman culture were very important priestesses guarding the temples. I wonder what authorities ancient Jewish women held, maybe pre-temple days. Any thoughts on that? That was kind of a loaded question.
Yeah, I mean, the other stuff wasn't going to really get me into trouble. This has the potential to, but you know, I don't shy away from questions. I'll tell you the truth. What my thinking is, after doing years of research on it, is that that you know the role of women has been downplayed in the Gnostic teachings. You know, Mary Magdalene was the teacher of Jesus, and so at least in one of the traditions I follow. So. So, I mean, the role of women, I think, has been suppressed over years. And certainly when we saw the Council of Nicaea, right, you have a male-dominated, you know, solar cult of Rome, which, you know, sees the writing on the wall. You know, no matter how many Christians they're thrown to the lions, they're just growing too quickly. So they need to bring Christianity, and whether it, you know, happened the way we're told in hoc signo vinces, you know, and Constantine just, you know, had this vision and then just, you know, warm and fuzzy feeling that he needed to adopt it, or whether it was more political, which it would be my thinking, and others. You know, Robert, I think his name is Robert Sepper has these, you know, amazing YouTubes if you ever want to watch, and he touches even on a lot of this in the semi-mainstream. But when you see the adoption of Christianity, you know, left on the cutting room floor of the Council of Nicaea is anything that would empower women, and the story you see, you know, Jesus given the birthday, you know, that's most aligns with the astrotheology of ancient Rome. And so I would say that a lot of it is just, you know, politics, but you found a lot of matriarchal cultures, you know, in antiquity leading up to that point. So according to many societies, like, you know, there is a secret current of knowledge, because knowledge is power, and maybe what they're doing is they're controlling that energy, and they're transmuting that energy through tantric sex. And again, if you look into Qigong in China, the emperors have been practicing this all along. But the teachings would say that the elites have been practicing this. And by the way, in Germany, the creators of you know, some of these horrible societies that we know from, you know, pre-World War II era, one of them was called the Vril Society, and it was all about, you know, women growing their hair long and learning these ancient practices of how to harness this energy, and with the energy that they stored, helping their male counterparts reach these heightened states of consciousness, with which they could commune with, say, otherworldly spirits. And so when people think that some of these guys from World War II were possessed, and I'm not going to mention any names, but there's a lot to it if they look at the Vril Society. And again, Robert Sepper has a book called Vril, and it's not that long, but I recommend it if you're not used to these concepts about channeling the sexual energy. And just watch this stuff. It's all free on YouTube, by the way.
Yeah, I think Brother Joe Martinez had a comment.
Oh, good.
I did, yeah. And Adam, please correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I took from the question, can you hear me okay now?
Yeah.
Okay. Back to the original question. I mean, and for me, I think you have to look at, like, you glean a lot of divine feminine in, if you read like the Tanakh. I mean, you got to look at Shekinah. It's not actually mentioned in the Bible itself, you know, what we term the Bible, but they were absolutely talking about the female presence of God on earth, right? When they were talking about the Ark of the Covenant and what was there, what that divine presence was. And Adam actually touched on it a little earlier when he talked about Adam and Eve, right? And Adam and Lilith. If you look at Genesis, especially if you go back to the ancient Greek, which I actually started learning, and it's actually kind of interesting, the way it reads, there's two creation stories for man. There's one where...
You're breaking up right there.
Oh. What about now?
Yep, perfect.
This is a lot of Joe in your face. So there's two creation stories in the Bible when it comes to man, not just one. There's one where man and woman were there, And then all of a sudden, you know, a couple of paragraphs later, woman came out of man. So, you know, you talk about that separation, which Adam went into in a lots of different examples of, which I think we try to get back to with all these other schools of thought. But that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and again, I agree with Joe. Again, that in order to make it into one of these holy books, there needed to be, from the societies, there needed to be 7 layers of meaning. So there's the literalist interpretation, which they do their best to jam, shoehorn in a story that hides a lot of these other meanings. But, whether it's, Ezekiel's, vision or the, his 4 animals, right, which are the fixed signs of the zodiac, right, Taurus and Scorpio and Leo and Aquarius, or whether it's the stuff from Revelations, or whether it's Muhammad splitting the moon or riding the Buraq to heaven. I mean, all of these things, when looked at esoterically, and again, going back to the energy going up the spine, the central nervous system, into the uppermost part of the brain, right? Into Solomon's temple, right? Between your temples, the top part of your brain is called the cerebrum, right? And that's from where we get Sarah and Abraham, right? And remember, there was no H's in their name, so it was Sarah and Brahm, right? So Sarah and Brahm, cerebrum, and also Brahma and Sada Shakti. Brahma and Sada is cerebrum as well, and it's it's all the stuff for the. I don't know if I talked about it here. I did the presentation from Nicaragua the other day, but the story of Santa Claus, going down the spine is this seed that's created up in the brain, according to the Gnostic tradition, that goes down the chimney, right? So it's created in the claustrum, the sainted claustrum, Santa Claus, and it goes down the central nervous system, and it travels along the face of the waters of the spinal cord. And so, again, Genesis 1:1, that's what you hear as you enter the lodge room, right, as an entered apprentice. So, yeah, I mean, and those are only just like esoteric meanings, metaphorically or allegorically. Now, you really want to get deep into it, then you need to understand maybe the different parts of Kabbalah, like the world of formation and archetypes, and understand that maybe in relation to tarot and astrology. But some of the deepest stuff has to do with all these correspondences or gematria. So looking at phrases in the Bible and why it was that there were 6 days of creation and rest on the 7th. All these things are Kabbalistic.
All right, thank you. Brother Rene Perez commented over on Facebook. He says Zosimus was one of the first individuals who wrote about alchemy, and stated he was taught by a woman named Marie Prophetess. And Brother Perez also said Hippolytus of Rome wrote about this in the brain. There is something called the bride chamber.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm guessing the bride chamber might be where the pineal, and what's the other one? There's not the thyroid. There's another gland in there. And again, if you look at the side angle of the hemisphere split, you see that inside that chamber is the chamber looks exactly like the Eye of Ra. So if we're able to do a part 2 to this, Matt, then the goal would be to cover as much as we can without overwhelming. It's on one half of it, which is the division of man and woman, and how we're always seeking to reunite it, but then focus more on the sacred feminine, and then more of the male aspects, which we're all familiar with in these patriarchal groups, and then tie that all back to the beginning. So I think we look more at that.
Yeah. So I actually have a question. We talked, quite a bit about the goddesses, Isis, Columbia, the feminine importance of a lot of this symbolism. But why, in your opinion, do not just even religions, but cultures in general tend to masculinize these beliefs and try to diminish the importance of the feminine?
Yeah, I mean, if you believe like the war scroll of the Essenes is because behind the scenes there is this fight, good versus evil, light versus dark, and when you have this kind of more maternal lunar energy, it's more associated with Venus than Mars, right? It's really hard to, get people to go to war and things like that, So if you have negative energies running countries, I could understand why you would want to diminish women and masculinize them, because it's control mechanism, right? So keep everyone like in constant fight or flight, always warring, and I think that's one way, but another is if everyone knew these secrets, it would empower everyone. And so I think that there's powers that be that don't want everyone to know these things. So it's been and so I'll tell you plainly, my humble belief, telling you plainly, is that there are groups behind the scenes that want to hide this knowledge from the masses. The bewildered herd don't want us all to know this, because I tell you what, to be able to have a conversation about deep Kabbalah like this, just like the masses, this is unthought of. This is in the historical context, this is stuff that the rabbis kept to themselves, right? And you needed to be part of the priest class, the Levites, and you needed to grow up going to yeshiva, and even then you had to be chosen, you had to be an adept, and then only when you were 40 years old with a quote unquote belly full of Torah, would you be taught these things. Once you've already had children and you weren't just full of all your younger sexual energies and desires, when you could learn these things. There's but we see that in society after society, and so to make the masses figuratively and literally impotent, right? So they couldn't uprise. Ask you a straight question, I'll give you a straight answer.
Does anyone else have any questions for Brother Adam? I've seen a lot of Adam, a lot of very complimentary things put on Facebook. Just people really commenting on how fascinating this presentation was and how informative it was, and I absolutely agree. And as promised, you kept it very. It was very solemn. It was dignified. There was nothing offensive or derogatory about it. So, I think you knocked it out of the ballpark, but I do, in context, see why the presentation is called Sex, Magic, and Freemasonry, because it makes sense in that context, but it's not some woo-woo, occultish kind of crazy stuff. It really lends itself to those narratives.
Can I tell you that the idea for this came up in 2017? I was in London with the Grand Lodge of DC for the 300th anniversary of Freemasonry, and anyway, I'd given some other presentations at our Scottish Rite Valley, and I was right next door to the United Grand Lodge of England at the Grand Connaught Rooms with the SGIG of DC, and for those that know him, he's just like very good guy and just fun to talk to, but like knowledgeable. and thought we didn't have enough esoteric programs, and that if, you know, I said that this was going to be Kabbalah and Freemasonry, nobody would have shown up. So we said, well, how about some marketing? And I said, okay, I'll do something on sex magic because it'll sound more exciting but it's an accurate description, because I love Joe put Crowley on his screen protector now, but such a joker. But yeah, so he says, Adam, you do sex magic, and I'll let you come present it here. And I can tell you, we had another group in Masonry that did the same thing, you know, poo-pooed it without knowing what it was actually about. They never heard anything about it, but you know, it just reminds me of what Einstein said: condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance. And so, you know, I got plenty of stuff online, articles. I got, you know, but the bottom line is that, you know, what, you know, people that, you know, are, you know, like me, I'm passionate about Freemasonry and Rosicrucianism, and like I would never do anything to degrade it. I love the craft. And, you know, I love my brothers and sisters, and I want to, you know, share a little bit of what I'm passionate about studying. And I, you know, never violate my obligations. And I've been fortunate enough to be asked by Grand Masters to, you know, have roles in their administrations. And I would never do anything to diminish that or to, you know, embarrass my brothers. So.
Adam, thank you so much. And just, you know, full disclosure to everyone, I did catch a little bit of heat for just the title of the presentation. But as you can see, the title is actually very apropos to what Brother Adam was saying, but not in a offensive, derogatory way. So, you know, I hope that no one took offense to the presentation. I don't think anyone did. I think that anyone who goes back and watches the recorded presentation later, I don't see anything that would really offend anybody. Joe Martinez just put in the chats that he was offended. But, you know, in fairness, Joe's offended by oxygen. So that's, although he said he was offended by the lack of Crowley. And I do love that you threw that quote by Crowley in there at the end, because I think it really summed up everything. I mean, yeah, he's not the most popular person in the world. He's a little out there, but that particular quote did suit the presentation. It did suit the topic.
In full disclosure, I'm not a fan. Like, I believe that, the serious GD work is done, from, these guys that were formerly SRA, were, long and arduous processes, and to cheapen them by finding shortcuts through drugs and the opposite use of sex. That's what they call black tantra, and it's the absolute opposite of what I'm saying. And again, going back to the War Scroll, those are the ones that, so maybe I'll end on this idea, is that just like the Tree of Life has the Kundalini energy that can go up it when you meditate right and you control that sexual energy. Kundalini, when used improperly, like Crowley did, and was called the Kunda buffer, because the Tree of Life has a mirror image that goes down, what they call the Klipoth, and those shells are, inhabited by the demons. And so, but it's a Kundalini energy, a serpent, but it goes down the tree instead of up it. And that's why Satan in the depictions has the tail that goes down, is because that's actually depicting the Kundalini energy that's wrong. It's being improperly applied. So it's the Kunda buffer instead of the Kundalini. And so, but that's not to say that there's no value in a book like 777, where it has, a lot of stuff that Crowley collected over many, years, and then, you know, did these large correspondence tables. And if I'm using gematria, there's no sense in really in some of the stories of King Solomon. I mean, if somebody looks at the esoteric stories of Solomon, will find out when Solomon the king was, you know, very powerful and given, you know, a ring by one of the archangels, he used it to control demons to create the house of God. So when, you know, but the bottom line is that we need to, you know, work on this temple. When we're doing things right and we're working on ourselves and we're using the tools of Freemasonry, you know, then we're doing God's work. And so, yeah.
Now, I'm not a fan of Crowley either, really, but you know, that particular quote, it's like the old saying, even a blind squirrel finds a nut every now and then. And you know, I think
I agreed. I thought it was a beautiful one, and so you know, he had good teachers. You know, it's kind of like Darth Vader at the end of the movie, right? Becomes a good guy and pulls his mask off or something. So, but yeah, I mean, he had some good in him, and it's probably buried deep down.
Yeah. But that was a great analogy. And worshipful brother Jason Richards commented over on Facebook that he was offended. I'll let you take that up with Jason later. So, does any of the brothers have any questions, or guests have any questions for Brother Adam?
Adam.
See, Hefe.
Stick around after we quit recording. I got questions.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Hey, I ain't losing my dues card, Matt.
You know what? I thought I was today after the calls I got. I think Brother Francisco, you had your hand raised. You can unmute yourself.
Okay, Brother. Adam, you know, as always, much respect, and thank you so much for the time you take to prepare all this work and share all of your knowledge with us. The Gnostics, I think they have a practice where with your wife, you reach that point where you're about to, you know, end that sexual aspect. I want to say it properly,
Yeah.
but you have to wait, right? And then, you know, start breathing again, and that's my question. What happens when, unfortunately, you go over that phase? Would that be like, what's the proper word? Would that be something that it's negative, or
I know you've read some of Samael Aumveor's work, and so, yeah, I mean, over time you just need to learn to control that and transmute it. And so, yeah, so there shouldn't be any. Now there are other things that I've read. Dr. Casey's work from the late 1800s, God, Man, the Word Made Flesh, and some of his other books that said that maybe a nocturnal emission is a way to get rid of some of these negative energies in you. I'd say that he conflicts with Samael Aumveor on that topic, but yeah, but in the I'll probably go into more of that in a later, you know, like I said, this is like kind of part one, and then tie up into maybe some breathing techniques and things like that.
Thank you, brother.
All right. Well, then, if everyone's done, I'll stay on, and I will just say, you know, just one more time, you know, Matt, Joe, and Refracted Light, thank you so much for hosting me. I really appreciate it, and you know, everybody that was in attendance, like humbly and honestly, like if I did offend anyone, you know, that was never my intention. This is just something that I happen to be passionate about. This isn't the only thing. I'm very passionate about astrology and Kabbalah in general, and this is just one of many presentations that I do. But you see that when I gave Matt the opportunity to, you know, look through, I think on the West Canyon Masonic Speakers Forum, there I have a list of presentations that I'll do. this is the one that like catches the eye, and it's good in that, you know, we get to discuss Kabbalah in a fun way, and maybe this is, you know, the way that it whets the appetite for others, and then and it's a pathway into understanding whichever holy book you like a little bit better. So I just, Matt and Joe, just thank you again, and everyone that's here, thank you so much for being on today.
Love you, man. Thank you.
We can't hear you, Matt. Matt, you're...
Of course, I'm muted. Worshipful Brother Adam, I was just saying that that was a fantastic presentation, and you are welcome back here anytime. We just love hearing from you. You're a wealth of knowledge, very, very insightful, and you approach all of your presentations with a, well, you can tell that you've put a lot of research and passion into these topics, and you know, you're very confident in your presentations, and I love that because I know it's coming from a genuine place. So again, you are welcome back anytime. We just love having you, brother.
Yeah, thank you so much. Happy to come back whenever you tell me.
All right. And with that, I will stop recording so that Clint can ask his burning questions. No offense, Clint. No pun intended.
Ah.